A safe third country. Somewhere to send asylum seekers that isn't this country, but also not their dangerous homeland. Sound familiar? No, it's not the Rwanda scheme. This is the return hub model that Keir Starmer, the now Prime Minister, is trying to explore. But what on earth is it, and how do the schemes differ, and what was that humiliation in Albania? Well, my name's Tom Harwood, and this is GBN Originals. Well, the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, has been talking tough on migration over the last 2 weeks. First, there was his Island of Strangers speech, rhetoric that was widely condemned by many on the Labour benches, but also condemned from the opposition benches, from the Conservative Party and the Reform Party, because that rhetoric, they say, did not match the policy proposals that Labour put forward. Indeed, the Labour Party saying that net migration might fall between 50,000 and 100,000 due to those measures that were taken. That would still leave net migration each year above 100,000 a year. By some estimates, gross migration would be around 800,000 people coming in each year. Does that really match the rhetoric that Sir Keir Starmer had put forward with regard to his tough stance on immigration? Well, I'll leave you to decide that. But now we're moving on to illegal immigration, because the Prime Minister has a new policy. The idea that failed asylum seekers who currently are stuck in this country, unable to be deported because of human rights concerns, because of legal wrangling, all sorts of reasons. We have failed asylum seekers who are denied asylum in this country and yet stay in this country. The Prime Minister thinks he has a solution, and he calls it the return hub model, finding safe third countries to send failed asylum seekers to so that they can wait there before their official deportation can occur, before they can be sent back to the place from which they came. This would be a cheaper solution than keeping people in hotels or in council accommodation, in private rented sectors in this country. Of course, finding countries where accommodation is cheaper to send people to, well, that could be a big step forward. But it was all massively thrown in the water over the last 24 hours because, embarrassingly for the Prime Minister, while he was having a joint press conference with the Albanian Prime Minister, and just moments after our own Prime Minister had announced this return hubs model, the Prime Minister of Albania shut it down, saying it did not want to work with any country other than Italy. Of course, Albania and Italy for some time now have had a similar model of refugee return, of asylum seeker dispersal, but Albania is saying it will only work with Italy, that they have this special partnership that the Prime Minister of Italy, Giorgia Meloni, worked hard to instigate. So clearly, Albania is off the table as one of these countries that could fit into a return hub model. So where else is the Prime Minister looking? Well, apparently up to 11 countries are being considered now by the British government, some in the Balkan regions, some of those neighbouring countries to Albania, the Serbias, the North Macedonias of this world, but also African countries are being considered too. However, at pains to point out one country that has not been named or even hinted at by the government has been the Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp. Now, the word on his lips is Rwanda, because of course that was the scheme that was junked by this new government when they got in, and now they're seemingly searching for similar models just with countries other than Rwanda. Is that because they're embarrassed about perhaps following something close to the Conservative model of asylum seeking dealing with? Well, that's what the Shadow Home Secretary would want you to think, but there are some clear differences between the original Rwanda model proposed first under Boris Johnson and carried through until the Tories were kicked out of office, and the now return hub model that the Home Secretary Yvette Cooper and Prime Minister Keir Starmer are suddenly talking about. These are two distinct policies for one big reason. The Prime Minister's return hubs model would only apply to failed asylum seekers, whereas the Rwanda scheme was to be applied to legitimate asylum seekers too. Now, this is a big distinction, because of course many people who come across the English Channel on those small boats are granted asylum. For many people seeking asylum in the United Kingdom, the only route that they see available to apply for asylum is by coming across on a small boat. The UK doesn't have an asylum path for many people that are outside of specific asylum routes, for example, the Ukrainian scheme. However, clearly, what happens if people can come across the channel on small boats, claim asylum and be granted asylum? Well, they will continue to come across the channel in small boats. That route is not being shut off as long as that is a route by which people can claim asylum. The whole idea of the Rwanda scheme was that people who came across on small boats would not stay in Britain, whether they were a legitimate asylum seeker or not a legitimate asylum seeker. And yet now this return hubs model will only deport those who are not legitimate asylum seekers, whether or not they came across via a small boat. Do you see what I'm saying here? The idea that there will still be a viable path to asylum for people who illegally enter the UK, who take that dangerous crossing, that crossing that is so anathema to the principles of this country. That is a deep, deep concern. So even if the Prime Minister does find a country willing to accept his return hub for failed asylum seekers, even if he finds the full 11 countries that are being spoken about in the media today, well, there would still be a route for people to come across the channel, claim asylum, and those successful will be able to stay in the UK. It's hard to think of how this is a route that will shut down the English Channel route, because it's not offshore processing, no matter how it's being spun, and it's not the same as the Rwanda scheme, no matter how it's being spun from left and from right. Yes, on the left of politics, people are condemning this government for aping the Tories with a sort of Rwanda-light policy. And the Tories, of course, are saying, look, we were right all along. Now Keir Starmer is copying our model. But he's not copying the Rwanda model. There is that crucial difference of legitimate versus illegitimate asylum seekers. And it's clear to see how this could have ramifications for months and indeed years to come, even if this return hubs model is set up. But of course, it was a humiliation for the Prime Minister in Albania, as the Prime Minister of Albania said right in front of Sir Keir Starmer that no return hubs will be set up by Britain in Albania. That left the Prime Minister a little bit out in the cold. But that's not to say that there won't be some sort of return hub set up in some sort of third country, a safe third country. And that's why, to some extent, we're seeing some warm noises from quarters that you might not have necessarily thought you would hear warm noises from. No, some human rights groups are tentatively supportive of the idea of return hubs, provided the fact that they're in safe countries and provided that they are only for failed asylum seekers. Well, it's clear to see how that might be a halfway house, not a full solution, and leaving that back door open to Britain, leaving that route for illegal migrants to claim asylum legitimately in Britain. That is still a problem that the government has not yet found a solution for. Well, how do you think these return hub models will continue? Is this a vindication of the Rwanda scheme, even if it's a halfway house one? Or is this yet another failed policy along the lines of smash the gangs? Those gangs, of course, keep being caught and yet keep popping up. It's like a game of whack-a-mole. For every gang that you crush, a new one comes to respond to the market demand, because these people aren't being trafficked across the channel. These people are paying people to take them across the channel. If you get rid of some of these people who are facilitating a boat transport, well, someone else will come along, because ultimately there are millions of people who simply want to get to this country to try their luck at claiming asylum. Well, do get involved in the comments section below. What do you think of the Prime Minister's return hubs model, and is it all that different from Rwanda? Well, while you get busy discussing that, do remember to click subscribe to the GBN YouTube channel for more original content.